I'm DELENA Turman, and I consider myself, a storyteller, a producer. Over the past about 10 years, I've evolved from being a more traditional daytime TV producer to content creator, and now I currently work in branded content for Uninterrupted, which is a digital platform for athletes created by LeBron James and Maverick Carter. I grew up in LA and really grew up, I would say, I guess, in the middle of Hollywood. So I kind of always had a different sort of viewpoint of Hollywood than I guess people that move here to get into the business. And I fought getting into the business for a really long time just because, not because I didn't love it or admire it or wasn't into entertainment and storytelling, but for me, I just knew sort of the realistic aspects of the industry as well as the people in LA. And so I kind of fought against that for a long time and thought I would, go to school, study journalism, become a writer, and maybe write about movies, but not try to make TV or make movies. I wouldn't be one of those crazy people. But of course, it happened, and naturally, I eventually sort of found my way right back to producing by the time I was in college. And so I went to a great high school. I went to Crossroads in Santa Monica, which is a very artistic high school. So I was always encouraged to use my voice and constantly find and fine-tune my voice from a really young age. And so when I went to college, I did study journalism, but I also sort of fought my way into screenwriting classes. And when I came back to LA after school, ended up, getting a job in entertainment, and that led me on a path of producing. The only thing I know I always loved writing, and I always loved storytelling. So for me, like I said, I always thought maybe I would be a writer, but even in pursuing writing, I thought that would be working for a magazine, being the editor-in-chief of Essence magazine one day or something, not necessarily producing or working in entertainment or working in Hollywood. And so I don't really know what sparked my interest or what made me pursue that per se, but I do think what happened was because theater was my first love, because entertainment, and being on a stage, even if I wasn't the one acting on a stage, like that, I always knew the feeling that gave me. So I had opportunities in high school and college to produce plays, and so once I just started understanding what producing was, and that I didn't necessarily have to be on camera to get that rush that you get when you're on a set, or when you're, literally like creating something from scratch and bringing everybody together. And that's what I was always good at. I was always good at like bringing people together and identifying the resources needed to sort of create something from nothing. So in college, that was a lot of times, even if there was like a fashion show fundraiser, I was doing that, or or if it was a play, or if it was an event, or if it was bringing a speaker to campus. And so all of those things were different forms of producing. And then I think that, coupled with studying TV as opposed to studying movies and film, really studying TV as well, that's what made me say, hey, I want to do this. And I worked for some magazines and I loved it, but I was like, I don't think I want to work for a magazine for the rest of my life. And I definitely don't want to like work for a magazine just talking about movies for the rest of my life. I don't want to be a movie critic or anything. So for me, once I realized I could get that rush that you get from being on set, that producers are creative as well. They're not just the ones putting a bunch of money behind a project and not really having any creative impact, but that producers are creative as well, then that started making me interested in that world. And I was also really lucky to be in my early 20s at the time that Shonda Rhimes was sort of like emerging into who she was, and one of the earliest people that gave me advice and lived down the street from me, and also went to my college, was a graduate of Medill, is Mara Brockett Hill. So I had these examples of women showrunners, women producers, women writers who were bosses and who were kind of changing the world and changing the game through just like putting reflections of people that looked like me on TV. And so in some sort of way I knew I wanted to do that, and for me it maybe was going to look different, but I knew I wanted to do that. I went to Northwestern and I had interned, I think maybe my junior year, the summer of my junior year, I had interned at HARPO, which was like my dream internship. So between loving Chicago, kind of like I said, being a little anti-LA, I thought, you know, I'll just try to get a job at HARPO and work for Oprah, and you know, and that'll be that, and that'll be great, and then I'll figure it out. But you know, for me, when I was coming out of college, it was probably the last couple of seasons of Oprah's show, and so it wasn't that easy to just kind of, you know, join the Oprah Winfrey Show and get a job on Oprah. But I did have a great experience interning there, and that was definitely something that I was leaving the possibility of it open, but I also didn't want to put all my eggs in one basket. So I also, there was a woman, I had interned at MTV the year before that, and I remember running into my senior year, I went to Barack Obama's inauguration, and I went to some event with my parents, and on the red carpet there was a woman that I remembered from my internship at MTV, and I just remembered her because she was really nice and she was a boss, and she was like a production manager, but she was a really respected production manager, and she had left MTV News to go to the Ellen Show, and I remember that was a really big deal, like she's leaving, she's going to the Ellen Show, and I ran into her at the inauguration at an event. We didn't even work that closely together, but I remember she was someone who used to let me sit in on like stand-up sessions, and I remember her just like giving talent direction, and like I said, just remember her being a really nice person that seemed just really experienced and well-versed and sort of graceful in what she did in a role that typically a lot of men held. So when I saw her, I just felt inclined to talk to her, and so I saw her and I was like, hi, my name's Dee. I interned at MTV News. You left for Ellen right around the time you were that I was there, and now I'm a senior in college and I'm looking for a job, and I just finished interning at HARPO for Oprah, and so I think I want to go into daytime TV. Like, how's Ellen? Do you love it? You know, and I just sparked up this conversation with her, and she's like, oh my gosh, thanks for saying hi. How are you? She's like, yeah, it's great. We should keep in touch. If you're ever in LA, let me know. We'll meet up. We'll go to lunch or something. You know, I connected with her and kept in touch, and we spoke, and I came to LA and came and met with her and developed this relationship with her. And so that led to me eventually having this job offer to work at the Ellen Show. And it wasn't easy. It was a lot of interviews. It was like an interview with her, and then her introducing me to her boss, who was like the executive in charge of production for the Ellen Show. And then once, I guess, he signed off on me, I had to come back and meet with the executive producers, and it was like 3 executive producers in a room interviewing me. And, you know, from my time at Ellen, I loved it, but, you know, Ellen's EPs are really tough people, and so it was a tough interview, but I ended up having a great relationship with everybody there, with the executive producers, with Nicole, who, you know, brought me in and has always been really gracious to me in my career. But it really was just me not being afraid to say hi, because I recognized somebody, and I recognized a woman I had worked with who I remember being a kind, smart person. I was always hesitant to pursue a career in entertainment or in Hollywood, and I think that was because I grew up with a father who is a working actor. And so while we've been really blessed where, you know, working actor, that term in Hollywood means not necessarily A-list, but an actor who continually gets work. and throughout their career. So that meant I always saw both sides of Hollywood. I saw the highs and the lows. I saw the times where when things were great, they were great, and when things were tough, they were tough. And I just thought no sane person, especially like with an education and options, like self-inflicts that upon themselves. But what that eventually like evolved into over time, and as I grew as an artist and as a person, was really having a respect for Hollywood and people that live that life, and actors in particular who live that life. What if you're a producer, if you're a director, I think in some ways it's a little bit more of a stable life, and a career that you have a little bit more control over, the respect you garner and the heights that you ascend to. So that always made me hesitant. And then I got advice really early on, because I think, my father, there was always a misperception that the internships I got or the opportunities I got were because my dad helped me. And that bothered me a lot. Because that wasn't necessarily the case. And so I got really great advice really early on. I mentioned Mara Brockett-Kill, who, if you don't know, she is the creator of Girlfriends, Being Mary Jane, The Game, and just a really amazing woman and showrunner and producer and writer. And I found out when I was in college that she lived in the same neighborhood as my parents. And she also is an alumni of Medill, where I went to school for journalism. And so I remember one summer I was home and I went and knocked on her door. Did not know her, knocked on her door, and she answered the door with a Northwestern shirt on and was like, "Hi." And I was like, "Hi, I'm your neighbor. I'm currently at Northwestern and I'm interning at MTV, but I think I want to go into TV. I wanted to know, could you talk to me for a few minutes?" And she was like, "Sure." This amazing woman took me into her backyard with her son, her like baby son at the time, and spoke to me for like an hour and a half. And one of the biggest takeaways that I had from that conversation was she had asked me a question that sort of alluded to when she was asking me what I was doing then, and I was interning at MTV, and she was like, "Oh great, did your dad help you get that?" And I was really defensive, and I was like, "No, he didn't. I applied like everybody else and I got it on my own." She said, "Okay, that's nice, but I'm asking you because people in this industry really admire and respect people who respect where they come from and have a pride in where they come from." And she was like, "Your father is an actor. There's not many people who have had careers like him, who have worked as long as he has. And so sometimes people, yes, they might be interested in speaking to you or learning more about that simply because they respect that, but you having an understanding of that and a respect for that, and then proving from that you are your own person and that you're at the door for a different reason, that's fine." And so essentially the takeaway that was like invaluable life advice from that conversation was, this is an industry that respects people who respect where they come from, and if that might be what gets you to the door, it definitely isn't going to be what gets you through the door, and it's still on you to get yourself through the door, and that's going to be you working hard and you being who you are as an individual. So that really helped me kind of have a certain peace with something that I didn't have a lot of peace with growing up. And so now if people assume I got somewhere because of someone or something, it doesn't really bother me much, because I understand the place that it's coming from and that it's not necessarily coming from a bad place. And also it makes me carry myself differently, where typically people don't assume that I got somewhere because of someone else or something else. I reflect a lot on, I guess, what is happening in the industry as it relates to women, and how we're treated, how we're perceived, and how we're elevated. I think a reason why I reflect more on that is because I work in sports. And so for me, it's not necessarily an entertainment thing as much as it's a sports thing to me. And it's hard for me to separate the two. Typically the things that I might get frustrated about or discouraged about in a given day or a week are usually, I think, things that I credit to sports or that I credit to corporate America, and not necessarily entertainment. But that doesn't mean that I don't think it exists. I just think intersectionalism is real, and that we don't really acknowledge intersectionalism. So we don't acknowledge intersectionalism when we're talking about a movement like Me Too, and we don't acknowledge how a Black woman's experience is going to be really different than even a white woman's experience, which is going to be really different than maybe an Asian woman's experience. And all of those experiences are equally valuable, equally important, but they are different. And so I think in the same way, it's not really fair to say, oh, this happened in the industry, period. It plays out differently in different ways, and women need support in different areas depending on, I think women in STEM, fields would feel like, no, the stuff I go through is really different than kind of what's getting spotlight right now, but it's just as important. And a woman in science or math or engineering, I can only imagine. And so for me as a woman in sports, there are things that I think are even different than in entertainment that I have to constantly sort of make sure I am not numb to. In sports, typically we're talking about domestic violence more regularly and more conversationally than any other field. Or in sports, we're talking about even sexual harassment or rape in a different way and more conversationally, just because of some of the incidents that actually get reported by the news on athletes. And so I really try to make sure, for me as a storyteller, that I'm not becoming numb to negative stories about Black men or to women being victims at the hands of athletes, because there is a part of me that absolutely loves that I get to tell stories about athletes every day, that I get to tell stories about really influential, powerful, talented men and women, but especially men and women of color. And that's what, sports allows me to do. But the other side of it is that it is a physical space. It is people are celebrated for their physicality, not necessarily for being emotionally in tune and being empathetic. And so when you're an empathetic person working in that space, it's really difficult. So do I think it's getting better? Yeah, I think it's getting better because it's okay to speak up in a room now. Do I think that means that every time we speak up in a room, we're heard now all of the sudden? No, I don't. I think that sometimes it still requires somebody's male boss saying the same thing that a woman just said in a meeting for it to be heard or for it to be taken seriously. And that's unfortunate. But if that's step one, if step one is, having a great male boss that's going to echo what you say now in a room and encouraging you to continue to say that, I guess that's a great step. But I'm not seeing like everything changing overnight now and things just, being so much easier for women in corporate America or women in sports or women in male-dominated fields. No, I think we have a lot of work to do, and I think it's scary, and I think it's scary because people do think it's two things. I think people either still think they can lose their jobs if they really are speaking up or are pulling up other women and helping them and purposely saying, nope, I'm just gonna advocate for, I love the people, trying to uplift people that, they identify with, or we need more of that. And I think that that's great. And I see that happening a little more, but yeah, I'd like to see more of that. And so, yeah, I think it's tough. I don't think it is something that is changing overnight. I think it's something that's changing little by little, and perhaps becoming a little less taboo to just have a stance on, where you fall when it comes to advocating for women or advocating for minorities or advocating for women who are minorities. But, there's work to do. I would say the first is conviction. At least as it pertains to being a producer, and being in a role in a field that is just so much about your instinct. I literally think I get paid for my instinct. So if I stopped following my gut, if I stopped like developing my ability to listen to my instinct, I think I would literally be ignoring the main ingredient required for my job, or at least the main thing that I get paid to do. And if I think about the times where like stuff has gone bad, where I'm like, oh, I messed up today, or I might get fired after this show, it's the times that I stupidly didn't trust my gut. And so I think conviction is really important, just like conviction of knowing that you know best. And it doesn't mean that you know everything, but it's just conviction to listen to that voice inside of you and know that you are the person that is supposed to be in that room right now, or telling that story at that exact time. And you know that every step and everything you do is on you to make the best decision, and that there's nobody else who knows better than you, as far as, at least as it pertains to the job that you've been asked to do. It takes a village, and it definitely takes a team, and I think sometimes it's okay to also say, I don't know, you know. So probably the second one is maybe humility, and being willing to say I don't know when you don't know. I've learned that over time and with maturity, that as I grow, and as I learn more, I am quicker to say I don't know. And I find that people respect that. I find that people that I really, you know, if I'm working with someone who I feel really blessed to be able to work with in a given day, I don't want to pretend like I know stuff that I don't. And so it's kind of the opposite of what people would think you're supposed to do in those situations, which is like, you know, because it is an industry of like fake it till you make it. And trust me, I believe in that too, like fake it till you make it. But I also think the smartest people, the people that you want to be in the room with, that you want to work with again, they will respect you so much more if you just say, I don't know. But the I don't know should be followed up with a, but I can find out. You know, so I'm very quick to be like, I don't know, but I can find out. And so yeah, humility. Definitely like remaining humble, humility, never thinking you made it. Like I think it is so interesting, people that have an idea of like success or making it in this industry, because I'm like, what does that look like? I don't know what that looks like, because last time I checked, Jay-Z is still working, Beyonce is still working, Clive Davis is still working, Quincy Jones is still working, you know, like all of the people that are the best at what they, you know, Diddy is still working. Like, so what is making it? Because all these people are still working that have achieved an unimaginable level of success. And the third, I think, would be, I guess, just determination, you know, never stopping, never, you know, always being hungry, never stopping. For me, I'm really determined to constantly like try to realign myself with my purpose. And I'm still young, so as much as I'm aware of my purpose, I don't necessarily feel like I'm walking completely in my purpose. So my determination is like to continually try and learn and gain opportunities that are getting me more and more in line with my purpose, so that I'm doing the same work. I'm, you know, determined to tell the stories I want to tell and bring together the people I want to bring together. But for me, I'm determined to do that where it eventually is fulfilling what I know is my purpose. And I think maybe I'm doing small parts of that, but I don't think I've had a job or a project yet that is like purpose fulfilled, you know. So for me, I'm gonna constantly be determined to keep trying to figure myself out and keep trying to figure my art out and my work out until I think I feel like I'm completely walking in and creating in my purpose.